Profit Live. Today's topic, we're going to do a Q&A. So Angie, Cori, we're going to answer all of those burning questions that you've had. So we've been taking your questions, sort of combined them, and we are going to answer about 11 questions. We are going to try to keep it kind of on topic. So the questions are going to revolve around like who we are, how we started our businesses, that type of thing. However, if you have off-topic questions and you're joining us for the YouTube Live, welcome. You can drop those into the form. So there's in the YouTube description, there's a form to ask questions, and you can ask those there that are off topic, and we will answer those in a future episode or even a future Q&A because we'll be doing these quarterly. So today we combined a few questions and we're going to talk about time management, our favorite materials, setting goals, and even how we started working together. Now, if you are joining us live and you have on-topic questions about Angie and Cori and our personal lives, then you can ask those in the chat and we'll kind of get to those at the end of the episode.
All right. So today we also want to ask you once again to rate and review our podcast. It is how it is being shown to people. It's how Apple and Spotify and other platforms decide whether or not they're going to show us in searches and, on the homepage. We have actually been seeing that people have been rating and reviewing. So if you have done that, that's just huge thank you from both of us. But if you haven't had a chance, we would really ask you to go and find your favorite podcast platform, give us a review, rate us so that we can get this podcast out to more people. So today, I wanted to mention too, Angie didn't mention, but if you are listening to the podcast afterward, we do have the link to the form in the podcast description as well. So ask your comment or ask your questions here. And Angie and I would both like to say, we're both a little bit under the weather today. So if we're sort of tripping over our words a little more than normal, it's because both of us have been sick and we are feeling better, but we're not feeling great yet. Yes. So we are happy that you are here with us. And so are we ready to get to our questions?
Let's do it. And the show must go on. Even when you sound like this, the show must go on.
The show must go on. All right. So our first question that we kind of got from people was, when did you start crafting? And then what inspired you to make it a business? So do you want to start, Angie?
Sure. I can remember crafting from when I was super small. My mom was into crafting. My grandma was into crafting. My grandfather was into woodworking. So tons of crafty inspiration all around me. I feel like I started, or the first thing I can really remember doing as a teen was embroidery. So like cross stitch. I loved to do that as a teen. So I made tons of cross stitch. And then as I got into college, I continued that and then fell out of crafting for a while, got back into it, kind of started a blog, started a YouTube channel. And what inspired me to make it a business is when I realized that people were interested in what I was making because it was sort of like I started a blog to keep myself accountable and to have an accountability because it's kind of a New Year's resolution to spruce up my home. And then I realized people were interested. So that kind of inspired me to make it a business.
Yeah, for me, I grew up crafty mom as well. I'm telling you, crafty parents and their crafty kids. My mom taught me to sew when I was really little. So I kind of came to crafting sort of through sewing. I also had I'm going to age myself here, but had all of the 80s kind of and 90s sort of crafts that we had as kids, like puff paint and the one where you spin the paint. I can't even think of what it's called right now. Anyway, I had all these sort of crafts that I really loved to do as a kid, and I've always been just kind of a little maker. And I've done a lot of crafts and a lot of DIY, and so I feel like I kind of got out of crafts as I got older and did a lot more DIY. And then Cricut sent me a Cricut, and it showed up on my doorstep one day. And this was back when they were just launching that first Cricut Explorer, and they were trying to get the word out. And I had started a blog and had been doing a little bit of crafts. I've been doing sewing and that sort of stuff. And it showed up on my doorstep. And then I realized how much I really love sort of machine crafting. So, and like Angie, I sort of kind of fell into it where people were like, hey, we have Cricut tutorials didn't exist on the internet. When we got that Cricut Explorer, right? Cricut's site had almost nothing on it. And so I started posting about that Cricut Explorer and people started listening. And so I sort of, got into sort of monetizing my business because people were really interested in that Cricut content.
Yeah, so you were talking about 80s crafts, and that made me remember. Do you remember the spirograph where you took the little gears? That was, like, one
My
of my favorite things to do.
my boys got one for Christmas last year, so they've been spirographing, which it's been very retro fun.
Like, I totally need I need one and for I don't even have young kids, but I need one.
Yes, you need one. Yes, all of those crafts I really enjoyed, as a kid, and I feel like that just continues on. You just kind of are a creative kid and then turn into a creative adult.
Alright, question number 2. Is it hard to go from crafting as a hobby to doing it as a business? And I'm gonna let Corey go first.
I would say yes. There are parts of it that are hard and there are parts of it that are easy. Like, I can say, like, I get to craft for a living, which is awesome. I mean, I could be, behind a desk like I was. I did marketing for years before I kind of quit everything to try and make this whole business work. And I vastly prefer this to, working for somebody and doing marketing. So it is kind of hard to make the leap from hobby to business, both in a like, how am I going to make money at it sense, but also in just a, now you're doing what you love to make money. And I find that it doesn't work for some people. Like, there's just some people who need to enjoy their crafts as crafts. And I completely and 100% totally get it. And if that's you, more power to you, because I feel like in my life, I'm like, okay, what else can I do to grow this business? And I feel like I'm very, gosh, my brain is broken today. I just feel like I have a lot of drive and I just want to make this business grow, but I have a very hard time just crafting for fun anymore. And that is sort of a disappointment that kind of came along with starting the business.
I totally agree with all that. And I will say sometimes I keep or try to keep a certain type of craft for just personal and, like, I don't share it just to have a little bit of my passion back because it's almost like it turns from a hobby passion and a fun passion into all business all the time. So I'm always thinking like, should I be filming this? Should I be taking pictures? Did I share that on Instagram? Like constantly when you're creating. So I feel like it can be tough. And I also wanted to say that I I feel like everyone's path is different from going from hobby to business. And it's not like Corey's path was different from my path. And each individual person's path is going to be different. And I just don't feel like it's repeatable because it's like you fall into different things and you enjoy different things that I do. Maybe you enjoy this part of the business that I don't like. And I just feel like everyone's path is different. So your path would be different. And yes, you have to have a lot of drive, a lot of passion, a lot of motivation, a lot of like making yourself get up and go, which can be hard, right?
Yes. I also think, I mean, I will say I have a lot of privilege in the fact that I've been able to make this work. I have the most supportive spouse you will ever meet. He was like, "Yeah, sure. We're going to make this work for you." And so he really has been a huge support in what I've done. And I know that a lot of people do not have support like that. They don't have family support, or they're single moms, or their spouse doesn't think they can run a business, all of these different things I didn't have to deal with, which made my path for this particular instance much easier than some other people. There are other things that have made it really hard. Like, I was trying to build this business when I had twins and they were in the NICU. So like when my business really was starting to take off was right when I had my babies. And that was a huge challenge in its own right. But I do feel like you were saying there really is sort of a different path that we all have to carve. There are similarities between our paths, but there's no like template that you can just follow to be successful.
Yeah, like when my business was taking off, my kids were older, high school, adults, and so I didn't have all of that to deal with. Like I didn't have little kids running around. They were taking care of themselves and I could concentrate on this business that was taking off. So, yeah, definitely some privilege works in, I think, at some point.
All right. So our third question is, how do you stay motivated like during times of doubt or when you're having issues? Which I think is a really good question because we have both had big dips in our businesses. We've both had really difficult times. This year has been difficult, I think, for both of us, just with just some personal issues that like we've had so many health issues in my family just in the last month. I like would take the entire podcast to describe them to you. So right now I'm feeling, I think I said this in the last podcast or the podcast before that I was feeling kind of low. And it's like I've been having to rely on some of these methods to like bring myself like back into my business. So I feel like for me, some of the things that I can do are, one, start creating some things I really enjoy. Like, a lot of times I'm just like, I'm just creating content. I'm just creating content. I'm just making projects. I'm just making stuff to sell, whatever it is. And you get really, I don't know, you kind of get in your brain like, okay, I have to do this. And so I found a couple of projects that I really wanted to do. And I just put everything else on the back burner and just did those projects. So I don't know if you saw this on my YouTube channel recently, I did these like sprayed book edges. And I'm like, I don't know how well this video is going to do, but it was with books I enjoyed. And it just brought out like another creative side of me that like, I was like, oh yes, I actually really do enjoy this. So that's one way that I kind of like get myself through those harder times, is I bring it back to the joy of sort of doing what I love to do.
So I agree. This is a problem for everyone. um, so I'll say one way I get around this is doing something I love. But for me, I love experimenting with different things. And you'll notice that on my YouTube channel. And everyone loves it when I do it. And I love it. My background's in engineering. And I just like to get a bunch of materials and experiment. Can I cut it with my Cricut? Will my laser work with this? And so for me, that often brings a lot of joy because I'm like figuring out a problem that probably no one else in the world is worried about. What's the best puff HTV? Is anyone worried about that? I was. So I like to figure out those problems. And then another thing I was going to say about this, I like to give myself permission to take some time off. And this is going to sound the opposite of what you would expect, but time off can actually make you more productive. So if I'm feeling down, I can take a couple of days, rest, relax, and when I come back, I'm more motivated. My head's clearer. I can work and be productive. And like I just feel like it's sort of like a reset. So working those days off into my calendar has been something that I've been aggressively trying to do.
Yeah, I feel like that's been something that's been big for me. So Monday, both Angie and I took Monday off. Neither of us felt well. I mean, we're running our own businesses in addition to running sort of the things we do together. And on Monday, we kind of were like, yeah, we're not doing anything today. So I took a 2-hour nap. I don't know. I was so tired. And I think just when I first started my business, I would have a really hard time like giving myself the permission to take a day off. I still have a hard time giving myself the permission. But I do think that because I took Monday off, I was way more productive Tuesday and Wednesday. I had some really good productive days, even though I was kind of feeling under the weather still. I also fiercely guard my family time. And I fiercely guard my weekends. So it's very, very rare that you'll see me working on a weekend. I will work a weekend if we are having one of our camps. You'll see me working on a Saturday and a little bit on Sunday. But for the most part, I just really try and guard that time. However, you might be somebody who is trying to build a business in your off time, which I totally understand. And that makes taking that time a little bit harder. So I do encourage you that even if you are like filling in the gaps in your life with your business, to still find that space, whether it's, if you can't take a whole day off, maybe you can just go for a really relaxing walk, or maybe you can take some time to read, or just something that like turns your brain off from the business so that when it is on, it knows it's on instead of trying to be on all the time, because it just doesn't work.
All right, next question. How do you balance creativity with all of the other things that go into running a business? And yes, this is a tough one. So for me, when I'm feeling really creative, like the ideas are flowing, I just jot down all of those ideas. Now, some of those ideas, Cori talked about the sprayed book edges. That's probably not going to be something that everyone is searching for, but it might really entice you, like your creativity. So I can kind of balance my idea list, right? So I can put the creative projects besides the projects that you all are searching for. So you're searching for, you want me to review the latest Cricut machine or the latest Cricut, whatever they have out. I can balance the creative projects with those projects that my audience is expecting. And that kind of, for me, sort of balances things out. It allows me to be creative, but also have, the running of the business side. Now I feel like if you're selling your items, I feel like it gets a bit tougher, because you are trying to sell everything you make. That's where I think maybe holding back some of the things you like to do and not putting them into the business comes in for me. So I have crafts that I enjoy to do, but I don't post about them. or I have hobbies that I like that I don't post about that are creative. So then I can do those hobbies on the side and then have the hobbies that just go into the business.
Yeah, I think sometimes I also get stuck in the weeds of the business.
Mhm.
And this is true no matter what kind of creative business you're running. If I've sat here doing taxes and I've done my accounting and I have to do, billing and all of these things, especially when they're related to money. I feel like all of that stuff is just mind numbing for me. So I really have to make sure that day to day, I am trying to be creative at least once a day. Whether that's even just jotting down a few ideas, like Angie said, maybe it's looking on Pinterest and kind of just seeing what's trending right now. Let's see, so that maybe I can think of a video idea for it in the future or a tutorial. I do feel like I need to have some sort of place that sparks joy in my day. So for example, gosh, I'm trying to think the other day, I had about 50 minutes left of or no, yeah, I think it was about 50 minutes. It wasn't even a full hour. And I was just scrolling through Instagram because it was like the last hour. I think this was really close to the end of the week. And I saw a book blog or a book influencer that I follow. And she had made this craft spinner or no, this reading spinner. So it was very funny. She made it out of cardboard and it basically had all of her chores that she had to do around the outsides. It was like, do dishes, fold laundry, pay taxes, like all this stuff. And then she had read at the bottom of sort of this pie chart. And then she put a paper clip and spun it around and it landed at the bottom of the chart because it wasn't a real spinner. It was just landed because of gravity on read. And I was like, I'm gonna make that, but for crafts. So I just broke out all the supplies for my laser the other day and made myself this silly little craft spinner that I made. You can see it. It's on my Instagram channel, or it's on my Instagram. So you can go see it. But it really was one of those things where I was like, I have not been creative in too long. I just need to make something, even if it's not, I'm not going to sell the file for it. I'm not going to do a tutorial on how to do it. I just made it. I did put it on Instagram, but it made me feel like it brought me a lot of joy. And so I feel like finding those places where you're like, even if you're just selling tumblers, like maybe it's, I'm going to make something else as a hobby. Maybe it's, I'm going to design something new. I'm going to try something new. I think that balancing that creativity with all the stuff that also goes into working in a business is really important.
Yeah, I love the spinner. Like you all have to all go look at her Instagram and look at the spinner. We all need one. And that your statement reminded me, I do like time blocking every day. I do time blocking. And mornings are business stuff and afternoons are creative. I get to make stuff. I get to film videos. So I actually block out time every day to make things. So that that I do actually do that.
All right. So our fifth question here is, what is the best way to market and promote handmade products? And so Angie and I, we run our businesses the way we do now, which we don't sell handmade products generally at this time, but we both have in the past. We both sell digital products now. But I think we do, after both having shops for years, we have some good advice here. So you want to start, Angie?
Sure. I would say the best way, our number one tip is always an email list, I feel like. So that's going to be our number one tip here. So start your email list, whether that is people that are interested in your stuff, people you have, offered an incentive to sign up for your list, or past customers. So past customers are often repeat customers and are often your best source to market and promote to. So I would definitely say start your email list, start sending out those emails. Whether it's just like, "Hey, I have a new thing in the shop," "Hey, I have a sale going on," or even just ways to use your product that maybe they're not thinking of, ways to bundle it together, like, okay, Easter's coming up. What could they have bundled together in your shop to put in an Easter basket or that type of thing? So creative ways to send emails, get them to opening emails, get them used to seeing your name in their inbox and opening those emails. I feel like that would be my number one tip.
That's also my number one tip. But my number two tip is to really focus on your photography and your branding. We're going to probably say this in every episode of this podcast, but photography and branding are really important. It is because we live in a visual society. So if you are if you're doing craft fairs in person, you still need to kind of have that brand. You need everything to sort of match, right? You need everything to look good visually. If you're selling online, you need everything to look good visually because we are visual creatures and we want things to look good. And that's what's going to catch our eye. It's what's going to make you stand out on social media. It's going to make you stand out at a craft fair. So you can work toward, a bit of branding. So choosing colors, choosing fonts, choosing a niche. So we talk about this all the time. You can niche down by product. So you can just make tumblers or drinkware, for example, or you can niche down by theme, which means that you could, niche down by everything I'm going to make is going to look celestial, or everything I'm going to make is going to be for pet owners, or whatever it is. That gives you a little bit broader product base. But either way, you really want your ideal customer to look either at your booth or at your shop or at your social media and know this person is for me right away, without having to sort through a bunch of different things. Because if you're selling a bunch of different things with a bunch of different images, with a bunch of different styles, nobody's going to sort through that. They want it very clear that you are the person selling the thing for them.
Yeah. And I feel like between those two tips, those are definitely our top two. And I do think you're going to like read a lot of blog posts or whatever if you Google this question, and there's going to be lists of things to do. It's easy to get overwhelmed when you're looking at marketing and promoting. So starting simple, the email list and product photography. Two things, master those, then move on to like the next step, because it's easy to get overwhelmed. I want to post on Instagram. I want to post on TikTok. I want to post on Facebook. Like it's easy to get overwhelmed with 5,000 different things to promote. So start simple, start with a couple of things, and then move on from there. All right, next one. How do you manage your time? How do you balance crafting, business tasks, and personal life?
This is a good question because it's really important. I can tell you right away that none of us, whether you're just starting out or you've been running your business for a while, have enough people working for us. It is really hard to hire somebody at a livable wage. I could easily hire 3 more people full time and have things for them to do tomorrow if I could afford them. I cannot afford them. And even if you are making tumblers, out of your house, like you could probably hire somebody to do shipping, but it's always about money, right? And so really have to figure out how to wear all of the hats that we have to wear well without dropping too many balls. I am really mixing up my metaphors. This is how you know that I'm not feeling very well. Very much mixing my metaphors here. But basically you want to figure out how you can, juggle everything you need to juggle without dropping too many of the balls. And so I feel like for me, it started with, like I said earlier, fiercely guarding that personal time. So I kind of was like, I cannot spend every waking minute on this business. And again, I have the privilege to work on this full time during the day, so I can take some more time on the weekends. So that for me was like guarding that personal time. It also means that I have a really good relationship with my family. We love to spend time together. I get to see my kids grow up, all of these things that if I was working all the time, I wouldn't be able to do. So that's to start. And then I'll let Angie talk about time blocking here, but I will talk about prioritization. Because I do feel like we think we have to do all these things. Like Angie said, there's 1,000 things and it's easy to get overwhelmed. And so a lot of times I will just do a giant brain dump and I will say, these are the things, that I have to do in the near future. I have one going right now. It's just like this document and I keep adding to it. But once you have that all out of your head, it's a lot easier to prioritize what you need to do. Because when it's all in your head, the thing that's going to be the most important to you is like, I have to go clean the windows, right? It's not like anything related to work. But when you can list all of the things you need to do for work, you can decide how much time you have and how much energy you have, and then you can start tackling things on that list. We talked about it in our second episode with Nicole Baker. I talked about my whole method for color coding my to-do list. You can go back and listen to that episode. I highly recommend it. But I do feel like if you're going through like with all this stuff in your head, it's really, really difficult to figure out what you need to do. So you need to start by making a list and then tackling the things you have enough energy for and enough time for.
I will say also making a list helps me to sleep, because otherwise that list is running through my head all night. I'll say that.
Yeah.
And Cori knew my favorite topic is time blocking. I love, love, love to time block. So what I do is time blocking. I do it every single day, every day. So I like to group like tasks together. So I will work on blog posts one day. I will work on YouTube videos another day. And those are examples, but basically just blocking like tasks together so that when you're in the mindset to do that, you do them all at one time. So I block out however long I think it's going to take, an hour or 2 hours, and I block out for that set of tasks that all relate to one thing. That helps me to stay on task and like to stay kind of like in the groove. So once I get in the groove of doing blog posts, it's easier for me to churn out 3 than just do 1 and move on and do another tomorrow, that type of thing. So I love time blocking. And then I time block everything. So I time block blog posts, YouTube channel. I blog post crafting. Time block crafting. Look at me getting my words mixed up now. I time block crafting, and I also time block when I am going to like end for the day. Like this is my end time. This is when like my hobby time, my family time, whatever time that is. So yes, prioritizing that time enough to put that on your calendar as a time block. Like this is the time that I end and ending at that time. And then the other thing I was going to say about this, it's often easier to balance things out if you have some separation, whatever that looks like for you. So, keeping the business stuff to a certain area of your home. This could be a corner, this could be a room, this could be, a portion of a walk in closet, is where I started. Whatever that space is, if that space is for business, and once you step out of that space, you're away from the business because it becomes very tempting to work all the time when your business is in your home and right in front of you. And I found it very challenging when I started to just work from the couch and work all the time because it was right there. My computer was right there. I was looking at it. I might as well turn it on and do some work right now, right? Instead of spending time with my family. So that separation really helped me, physical separation, not just time separation.
Yeah, I wanna go back to your time blocking a little bit too, because a lot of people will say, like, you should do A, B, and C on Monday, and then, these tasks on Tuesday and these tasks on Wednesday. But if you're like me, my schedule has to be more flexible than that, because I am dealing with young kids. I still have young kids. And then I am also dealing with the fact that I have a chronic illness. So some days I'm like, I'm going to film YouTube videos on Tuesdays. And some Tuesdays I feel like crap. I'm just like, I cannot film today. So I have to have a very flexible time blocking. So like Angie, I find it a lot easier if I can sort of batch things. I'm going to make 3 YouTube videos. I'm going to, update my shop, with this many SVGs this week or whatever. I find it easy to do those in big chunks, but I have to have those chunks be really flexible. You may be able to work in a little bit more of a rigid sort of schedule. I did when I didn't have kids and didn't have a chronic illness. I was the queen of schedules. Like I could down to the minute be scheduled on what I wanted to do. It has to be much more flexible for this time of my life. But I do feel like just batching and sort of putting thing like with like together makes working a lot easier. So if, for example, you're making sweatshirts, you can do all of your, prints at one time. You can do all of your weeding at one time, whatever it is, do it all at one time so that you have this chunk of stuff ready to go for the next step in the process.
So I use Trello, but I feel like whatever calendar you use, I like Trello, and I like to make it where I can basically drag and drop it. So when I'm having one of those days Cori was talking about, this Monday, for instance, where I just was like, no, I have to be on the couch. I can take those blocks, those chunks of time and move them to other days. So I do like having that flexibility to like move it around. And that way I just move it out and move the rest of the days around.
Yeah, same thing for me. All right, let's see. Our next question, somebody asked us, like, what is our favorite thing to do? Like, what is our favorite craft? What are our favorite materials, techniques, that sort of stuff? It's kind of a personal question, but I liked it, so we put it on here.
So all of them.
All of them.
We're both gonna have the same type of response, and it's all gonna be about machine crafting, but I'll do some and you can do another. So we both like crafting technology, printers, lasers, Cricut machines, that type of thing. I will say that sublimation is definitely like I still get gasp at some of the results sometimes, and I've been doing sublimation for a while. So sublimation definitely is way up there on my list of favorites, just because it's so versatile with the printing, the pressing, the different blanks you can get. I just ordered. I'm so excited about some new blanks I ordered, and this is one of the ones that is creative. and probably won't be in YouTube search results at all. And I can't wait to film that video and show you all what I have found for blanks. But I will save that, and so stay tuned on YouTube for that one. But it just gets me excited, like when a new blank comes out, and I'm just giddy with excitement about getting to press it and share that on YouTube.
Yeah, I feel like sublimation is really high on my list. I just made sublimation nightlights last week, and holy moly, there's a new blank out, and I was like, this is the prettiest thing I've ever made. It's gorgeous. This nightlight. I have no need for a nightlight. I'm a grown up. um, but it was just one of those things where it just brought a lot of joy. So my other favorite, and I really want to keep doing more of this, is laser crafting. I need all of you to get into laser crafting so that I can make more tutorials about it, because I have 5 laser machines, guys, and I love them. But specifically, there are now laser machines that work really well, like as entry level laser machines. So I do feel like laser crafting is like going to the masses, and I am so excited about it.
Yeah, so if you all have not seen, the Glowforge Spark came out not too long ago, and the Spark is like the most affordable laser I've seen of its type. So it's like it's on pre-sale just for a few more days though, right? Like it's
Yeah.
like April 4th it ends. It's on pre-sale for $5.99. So it to me it's like a gateway into laser, right? So you can get that, see what laser crafting is all about, see if you love it, and then, if you wanna use it for business, upgrade to a different Glowforge at a later time. But for me, um, a laser crafting was very intimidating at first, and so I was like, if I spend the thousands of dollars on this pro machine, like, how intimidating am I gonna be when it gets here? But $5.99 for the Spark, it feels much less intimidating, it's a smaller machine, and I just love it and how easy it was to set up.
I feel like you can make so many things with a Glowforge laser. I mean, you can the crafting possibilities, I love them. So you can cut and you can engrave and you can score, which is kind of a type of engraving using a laser machine. So you can make all sorts of projects out of wood and acrylic and leather. There are lots of materials that it can cut, lots of materials it can engrave. And every time I make something on my laser, I'm like, this looks like it came from a store. And I love that. I know there are probably people who are like, I like the handmade feel, but I also love the fact that the other day when I was like, I want to make this craft spinner. And an hour later, I had this very cool craft spinner that I made out of acrylic. But I do feel like because the Glowforge Pro or the Glowforge Plus, they can seem kind of intimidating to start out. It's actually what I started with. That was my first machine. And it was intimidating. But having the Glowforge Spark and the Glowforge Aura really mean that like, you can kind of get in there and it's not nearly as scary. And then if you want to like ramp up production because you're like, oh, I want to add laser crafting to my business, then something like the Pro or the Plus would be a great machine.
Yeah, the Pro or the Plus is definitely way faster for those production level things. But if I want to make a pair of earrings for an event I'm going to, I'm gonna pull that Spark out and I'm gonna make them right there.
Yeah, it's just, I don't know. I find laser crafting to be super fun. I find the materials to be super fun. And I just feel like, you know, crafting with a Cricut is awesome. And I really do like crafting with a Cricut, but I feel like things just get thicker. The things you can make get thicker when you have a laser. So you can cut really thick wood and you can cut, or at least much thicker wood, and you can cut, acrylic and just things that you can't cut on an electronic cutting machine, you can with a laser. And that just opens up the possibilities of crafting with a machine.
So if you want to get in on the Glowforge Spark pre-sale, do it by April 4th. Is it April 4th?
April 4th. Yeah.
Okay. And I'm going to put up a QR code here. For if you're joining us on YouTube, I put up a QR code. However, if you are listening to the podcast, it's link.craftingcamps.com/GF. That's link.craftingcamps.com/GF. And by April 4th, get in on the pre-sale because it goes up to like $6.99 after that. So
Which is still a really good price for a laser.
Yeah.
Every other crafting laser is closer to $1,000. So if you're thinking about it, it's a good time to do it.
We obviously highly recommend laser crafting, and we want you to be able to make all the things we're going to make on our YouTube channels with these lasers.
All right. So what advice would you give to someone just starting to sell their laser crafts? Or sorry, I'm so stuck on laser. Just starting to sell their crafts, whatever you sell. I think this is a great question that that several people asked us.
Yes. So I don't want to repeat. Let's just get it out of the way right now. We're going to be like good photography, niche down, start your email list. Let's get those out of the way right now.
Those are really our top 3 tips. It's just
Those are
gonna keep
going to
coming
be
back
our
to this.
top 3 tips. Do we have another tip like in addition to that? I
Yeah,
would
I think
say
oh, go ahead.
maybe my biggest advice would be to think about what you're passionate about making. So I'm going to like share a personal story. I had an Etsy shop and I started it doing catering to like wedding crafts. So people that were having weddings and I got orders for 400 of one thing. And I found out very quickly that my passion was not making 400 of one thing. So I feel like if I would have thought that through a little bit before I dove in, it seemed like a good idea at the time. It wasn't a good idea for me and my personality. So that is one bit of advice I would give is to like think about you, think about your personality, what you like to do, yes. What you're passionate about, yes. But can you do that over and over and over again and still be passionate about it? I feel like I ask people that all the time when they're just starting to sell.
Yeah, I think that's really good advice. I also think, can you scale it? Um, if it's gonna I mean, it really depends on what you're making. If you are making something that you can sell for a lot of money, you don't need to scale quite as much as if you're making small things that you may want to sell a lot of. And it really depends on how long it takes you to make something, for example. So when you're starting out, you have the thing that you're passionate about. You've sort of niched down, you've started your email list, you've done all these other things that Angie and I always mention. But I think there becomes a tipping point. And what that is, whether or not you can continue to make whatever it is at the pace that people are asking for it. This is especially true if something you're making goes viral, which obviously doesn't happen all the time, but it does happen. So we talked about the butter shirt. We talked about the butter shirt, I think, in the first episode. And this t-shirt or this hoodie, not even a hoodie, sweatshirt, that's the word I'm looking for. This sweatshirt has gone viral. And it's basically like, it looks like, it's a yellow shirt and it has like a stick of butter writing on the front. It's really cute. But the owner, she had to figure out, okay, I was making these on my Cricut. I can no longer make these on my Cricut. I cannot. The amount of orders I am getting in my pre-orders is too high. So she had to figure out whether or not she wanted to have them, she wanted to turn to DTF, if she wanted to get the prints made for her, if she wanted to actually outsource it, those sorts of things. So that's something just to kind of keep in mind. I don't know if that's really starting to sell your crafts, though. I feel like I got too far ahead. So let me go back. Let me rewind and figure out what I would say to somebody just starting to sell their crafts. And that is really to be yourself and to find your audience. So there is going to be somebody who wants your crafts, as long as they are well made. That's one thing that you should really get your quality down. But trying to make another butter shirt is just like, don't try that. Figure out your own thing. Figure out a way to set yourself apart from the market. Make sure you are finding that customer avatar, that person that you're really speaking to. Because if you're selling something that looks like something everybody else is selling, then you just get lost in the mix. But if you have a brilliant idea to make a butter sweatshirt or whatever it is that nobody has done before and that is really unique and very, looks really good in photos, I feel like you're going to have a much higher rate of success than if you're just trying to make everything everybody else is trying to make as well.
Yeah, I definitely think the butter shirts of the world are unique ideas. The viral things are unique, always.
Yeah, always.
All right. This is a big one. How do you handle customer feedback, both negative and positive?
This is so hard, guys.
You want me to go first?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm going to talk about negative, and I'm going to say there's 2 types of negative feedback for me. There is constructive negative feedback, and then there is mean negative feedback that is just meant to be mean spirited. When it's constructive, when they are approaching me about something, I sell digital files or cheat sheets, ebooks. If they were to approach me and say, something isn't working, and it is constructive feedback, I try to address that immediately. And if it is like a legitimate concern and something that has affected their experience, I would probably do some kind of discount, money back, that type of thing. Now, if it is feedback that is just mean-spirited, once you get on social media, you will have comments that are just frankly mean-spirited. In my opinion, no one has time for those. Those just get deleted and banned, period. I don't have time to deal with that mean-spirited type of feedback. So that's my negative feedback comments.
I feel like that's really true. I have a very, very hard time not taking things personally. Um, if it's constructive, again, I'm just like Angie. I try to address it right away. Coupon, refund, whatever it needs, I will address it right away. If it's just mean, I will block. Actually, what I will do is I will say a lot of really mean comebacks in my head for a while. Like basically I will just sit there and be mean back. And it's probably unhealthy, but I'm not going to lie. It's what I do. I'm like, well, your profile photo makes you look like whatever. And I'm like, okay, Cori, this is not healthy. So I often delete. Sometimes my community will come to my rescue, which is nice. And they'll talk back and I'm like, yeah, you go for it. Please do. But I do feel like, especially when you're first starting and you don't have a very thick skin because you haven't been posting your products or on social media very long, just sit with it for a little bit. Like, know that it can make you feel crappy. And the point of the person saying it was probably to make you feel crappy. And so, yeah, it sucks. It just really sucks. And people are mean. They are meaner behind a keyboard, which is really terrible because, I'm not even going to go into the number of things that people have said, but, it's just one of those things that for a long time, I just felt crappy about them, and you may feel crappy about them, and that's okay. But don't let it sit with you forever. Don't let it deter you from what you're doing. If it's, criticism that you need to hear, take it and sit with it and change course if necessary. But for just those mean comments, say mean stuff back and then delete, or say mean stuff back in the comments, because sometimes that works really well for engagement. Leaving those mean comments up and letting people respond, honestly, also, it can be really good for engagement. Positive feedback, if somebody emails me, I try really hard to respond to everybody personally. So if you email me, if you show up on my Instagram, if you are on my YouTube channel, wherever it is, I love feedback. I'm like, yeah, thanks. Awesome. I'll at least give you a heart.
Yeah, I agree with Spawn, and I would also say for positive feedback, collect it. Collect it in some way, because you're going to want to share it on your product listings, share it on, like any type of sales pages you have, any place where you can say, hey, look at these satisfied customers. So find a way to collect the positive feedback. I would also say that.
Yeah, if you go to my website, so just heyletsmakestuff.com, and I think it's under About, I have a whole page called Wall of Wins, where I have just screenshotted nice stuff people say about me, which sounds really self-involved, but I go to that page sometimes when I'm feeling down and I'm like, wait, I'm doing okay. All of these people said these nice things about my products. Almost all of them are about my products, not even about me. They're just like, this was a really helpful ebook. These digital files cut beautifully on my Cricut, whatever it is. I have those all screenshotted and I have them public because I want to be able to say, like, if somebody's like, does anybody know if this is a scam, or whatever, if I'm running an ad or something like that, I'm like, here's my wall of wins. They're all screenshots from Facebook, Instagram, all those places.
All right, next question. This is another hard one. How do you set and measure goals for your business, and what goals do you have right now?
Ooh, this has been interesting because when I first started, when I kind of like moved into the crafting machine world, and I had consistent growth sort of year to year. So for a couple of years, I could say, I want to hit this many followers on this social media platform. I want to make this many sales. I want to have this many page views. I want to make this much money. Like all of these things, and I could generally for several years reliably hit those goals. The pandemic hit and all my goals went out the window, and I did really well. People did so badly in the pandemic, except for people who were trying to teach other people how to use a Cricut. Because everybody was stuck at home and trying to learn to use their Cricut. So 2020, terrible year overall for so many reasons, pretty good for crafter people. And after that, It has been very hard for me to set goals because I do not want to have another pandemic and have growth like that. And I have lost a lot of that growth. And so trying to set goals now is very difficult because algorithms are changing. And it's like, I really want to hit these numbers and I'm not getting anywhere close. Or I had huge growth in this one area that I didn't even expect to have growth in. So I will say setting goals is a great idea. I want to make this much money. I want to do this many craft fairs per year. I want to open my Etsy shop and get 20 things listed, whatever those goals are for you. I think having those goals gives you something to aim at. But I will also say that we are really in a season of turmoil when it comes to especially the internet. There is a lot of talk in different groups for people who have websites, for small businesses, all of these different things, that things can be really, really difficult right now. You're trying to compete with Amazon. Like, what? You are not Jeff Bezos. I am not Jeff Bezos. Thank goodness. So we really need to kind of figure out, like, what are reasonable goals to set in a very vastly changing landscape. And so my big goal right now is to hit, by the end of the year, and I don't know if I'm going to do it, I want to hit 50,000 followers on YouTube. That's my goal.
So now everyone needs to share her YouTube channel.
Yes. So if you are not following, if you're watching on Angie's channel, please go to my channel and follow so I can get to that goal. It's a stretch goal. It's basically doubling what I have now. But it is a goal for me. So Angie, what do you think?
So I tend to look at the like end of the year or beginning of the first of the year. I tend to look at the entire year and like, what do I want to accomplish? But I am like you, and I'm finding numeric goals very tough right now. And I like economy, I think, has a lot to do with it as well. So I've thrown numeric goals kind of out the window right now, and I've just started thinking about things I want to concentrate on with my business. And it's going to be very boring, but one of my goals is basically to like do a website overhaul this year. So cleaning up old blog posts, cleaning up links is a very boring goal. However, as a business owner, I feel like you'll have exciting goals and you'll have very boring goals. You will have a combination of both. And some years it was very exciting, right? I wanted to grow my Instagram and I wanted to get to a certain number and that type of thing. But this year is probably a very boring goal for everyone, but I just basically want to do like a website overhaul this year. So yeah. So don't
And
worry if your goals are boring. I'm right there
yes.
with you.
I mean, both of our goals separately and then now together is to reach more people who want to start crafty businesses and help people grow their crafty businesses. That's why you're listening to this podcast. It's because one of our goals is to connect with you more. It's to connect with our audience more. It's not necessarily to get this many podcast views or make this much money on our podcast. We are not making a lot of money on our podcast, but it is basically to help you be able to start a business, because we've realized that our audience is really interested in this topic. It's something that we've done. So now we want to just basically share the love with you guys.
Yeah. So as a long-term goal for my business, and that's over like for as long as my business exists, I would like to help other small businesses. That's like been one of my goals. And this was one huge step, this podcast, in the right direction for that goal. So thank you, Cori.
You are welcome. It's also reaching one of my goals, which is also to help other small businesses.
And yes, Cori and I do sit down together and make goals.
And I feel like a lot of our goals align, which helps. But I do feel like, we've been very successful and very lucky and very privileged, and we've worked really hard. A combination of all the things that have got us to where we are now, and it's now time for us to help give back. So hopefully you guys are finding some interesting and helpful content here in the podcast.
You remember Jennifer Maker did that talk, and she talked about basically having like did she call it a code of ethics, or what was the word she used?
Yeah, it was similar to having like a code of ethics or
okay,
a mission or something like that. Yeah.
Mission, yes.
Mission.
So basically like a list of missions for your business. And she gave this talk, I think we heard it in July of last year. She gave this talk to a small group of people, and I have like really embraced that. So just laying out like basically missions and ethics for my business as a whole, so that I follow them. Anyone that is working for me follows them, and I try to basically moving the business in the direction to follow those missions and ethical goals.
Yeah. The last thing you want is to get your business to a place where all of a sudden you're doing things that feel icky. right? You don't want to get to that point, and it's so easy to get to that point in this, I don't know, everything that's going on right now. It really is easy to get to the point where things feel icky. And if it's feeling icky to you on the inside, it's not for you. And Angie and I can say that categorically, it's not for you. There are things that I have done in the past where it has started to feel icky and I've said, I'm done with this. There's other things I've done in the past where I went through the ick and on the other side, I said, I should have stopped. I should have said no. I should have done something differently. So I do feel like, having that kind of code of ethics or a mission statement really can help your business grow in a healthy direction for you. You don't want that cognitive dissonance in your soul, right? You want everything that you're doing on the outside to match up with what you're doing on the inside. And I feel like there's so many ways that things can go icky, and just don't do it. Don't do it.
Crafting for profit should be fun, not icky, right?
It should not be icky. Please don't make it icky, guys.
All right, last question. How did the two of you start working together, and any advice for partnerships with other creatives?
So we both have very much a cooperation over competition sort of mindset. You are looking at my biggest competitor is Angie Holden. My next biggest competitor is Jennifer Maker. The three of us are friends, right? We would much rather collaborate and have the synergy of all of our businesses sort of working together than try and compete against each other for everything. It just, again, is icky. I don't want to be icky. I want to have people at my level in my space doing what I do who I'm friends with. I don't want to be a lone wolf. I don't want to go at it alone. And so Angie and I met, though. We don't know when we met. We met at a conference at some point.
I think that you were talking about when Cricut sent you that first machine. We were both in that, they did some kind of competition, and we were both in it. And that's the first time I remember chatting with you, I think.
Yeah, I think so. And that would have been 2009, 2010. I mean, it's been a long time.
2010 or 2011, I think.
Yeah. So it's been a long time that we've known each other. We met at some point at a conference, and we've done little partnerships here and there where we've, I posted on I did a guest post on her blog, and she did a guest post on my blog back in the day. And then sublimation really started to take off a couple of years ago. And we had participated with Abby Kirsten, another person who we collaborate with a lot, another direct competitor. Abby Kirsten had done her Cricut Craft Fest, and we participated in her Cricut Craft Fest. And once that was over, I sent Angie a message that said, when are we doing sublimation? When are we doing a sublimation event? And within days, we had started planning the event. And I don't think I would ever be where I am today without partnering with other people to grow. I think we can just look at the other booth at the craft fair and say she's selling soap and I'm selling soap and she is evil and I am good, right? No. Instead, meet with the other soap maker and figure out how to do a collaborative something or other, figure out how you can promote each other. If we look at things from this scarcity mindset, where it's there's only this many people who are only going to buy this many products and I have to get those people, it turns icky. It gets icky again. But if you kind of are I'm going to find my people, and I'm going to work with other people to find my people, and some of my people will be their people too, and we can just grow together. I feel like that's just so much better than having this competitive mindset.
Yeah. And so the soap example, the more people that discover that handmade soap is amazing, the more customers you both have. And so that's the same thing for us. The more people that realize sublimation is amazing, the more customers or viewers there are for both of us. So my favorite quote is, a rising tide raises all ships. So we're basically raising that tide for crafting and sublimation, or lasers, for example, and we'll raise it together and get more people involved. And then both of our businesses rise up.
Right. And we're partnering sort of with you in this podcast, right? Our goal with this podcast is to help raise your boat. Because as your boat goes, as you raise your boat, our boats go up too. And so it really I feel just having this mindset of there is enough. And I have to tell myself a lot because I feel like I can have a scarcity mindset, but I really feel like just constantly repeating to myself, there is enough. I have my people. More of my people will find me. And they do because I am not just holding on to everything with like an iron grip.
Yeah, so the second part of that question, advice for partnership with other creatives would just be don't be scared to do it. Don't be scared of your competition. Work together, raise that tide, and then you'll both be doing better. And like there's nothing better than a person that understands your business to be able to chat with. I'll just go ahead and say that right now. So if you want someone, because it is hard to work for yourself and the other people around you don't exactly understand what you're doing. So having that other person to chat with that understands exactly what you're doing, even though they're a direct competitor, is like it helps your mental load as well, I feel like. So that's another reason to definitely look at
Yeah, and you can like
your
reach out. Yeah,
Go
you can
ahead,
reach
sorry.
out to people at craft fairs, talk to people. Look for people who are doing something that complements what you're doing as well. That's a great person to partner with. So we had Crystal on for our last episode, and she talked about how she and her friend Jess have sort of complementary products, and they put them next to each other at a craft fair. So her products go really well with Jess's products. They aren't exactly the same, but they have kind of the same buyer. So finding people who complement is a really good idea. I think also just I think that there's so many people that have that scarcity mindset that it is hard sometimes to find people who are willing to partner with you, which I understand. So I feel like talking about it more, talking about community more, reaching out to people like in a spirit of community, a rising tide lifts all boats, et cetera, et cetera. Reach out to people with that kind of mindset and, just try and talk through it. Because I mean, I think when I first started, I was like, oh no, somebody else is going to get my page views or somebody else is going to buy somebody else's products. And now I just don't have that mindset anymore. And so it really is that mindset shift as well. Just understanding that not everybody is going to be the person you want to partner with, but just start reaching out to people in a spirit of community. I think community is so huge right now. Talk about how we're making handmade products, right? We are not making things made by an AI robot, which is awesome. And so like building up the fact that you can have all these people coming together to sort of offset all of the icky AI and stuff that's coming up right now.
And I just did want to shout out if you're on Facebook, we have a Crafting for Profit campers group on Facebook. Does not matter if you have been in one of our past camps or not. You are more than welcome to join there. And you can definitely post like looking for people to work with, like what you're kind of looking for, and sort of find like-minded people in that group. It's full of people that are crafting for profit or want to be.
Yeah. And somebody just mentioned in the comments, and I know we can get to questions here in a minute, but somebody did talk about Mean Girls. And I mean, we are in a very female-based industry. Just the creative industry is a very female-based industry. And there are mean girls. We have them in our industry as well. We have people that Angie and I refuse to work with. And it's because nobody wants to work with a mean girl. And it's really hard when you're in a group with somebody with a mean girl. I understand that that's difficult. And sometimes you may need to step away. There have been times where I've had to step away from things because I was just like, I cannot with this negativity. I cannot with the backstabbing and all of these things. And that has meant that I have left good people behind. And that sucks. But at some point you have to prioritize your own mental health, your own self-care over staying in a group with somebody who's really dragging you down.
Yeah, and I feel like eventually you will find your people.
Yeah.
Hold out, you'll find them.
You'll find them.
All right, so if you're joining us for the YouTube Live, we're gonna do, a last call for questions. We have an offer for you. We're gonna talk about the offer, and then we're gonna start, pulling some questions from the chat and answering a few of those. So our offer is some ebooks from Cori, and it's how to make money with Cricut crafting and how to make money with sublimation crafting. And Cori, you wanna tell us about them? And I'll put if you are joining us for the, YouTube Live, I'm gonna go ahead and drop the QR code.
Yeah, so these are 2 ebooks I wrote a while back. They're not super long, but they're really in depth, and it's kind of like an overview of a lot of what we talk about here on the podcast, specifically for Cricut crafting and specifically for sublimation crafting. So I talk about setting up your workspace, I talk about pricing, I talk about a whole bunch of different things. People have found them very helpful. I have a lot of really good reviews. You can go to my wall of wins to see those very good reviews. And just for this just for this podcast, I have them on sale for $7 each. So you can go to that link or that QR code and you can grab the ebook for just $7. I feel like it has a lot of really good information. I would love your feedback. If you think, I don't want your mean feedback. I want your constructive feedback if you think there are things that are missing. But yeah, I think this is just a really good printable resource because a lot of times we can watch all these videos, we can read all these things, but this is like having it right in front of you. You can print it out, you can make notes in the margins. And I think it will help you kind of get started if you're really wanting to start a Cricut or sublimation business.
And so the link is link.craftingcamps.com/books, link.craftingcamps.com/books. And you can choose whichever one you want or get them both at $7 each. And so thank you, Cori, for offering an amazing deal on your
You're
ebooks
welcome.
today.
Let's see. Somebody did want to know the name of the Facebook group again. So that's
Yes, I was going to put that up first.
So that's Crafting for Profit Camp.
Campers group.
Campers group.
Yes.
So there's Crafting for Profit Camp. Campers Tent is what it's called because we have this whole camp theme. There is a speakers tent. Don't join that one. That's for all of our speakers, but it's the Campers Tent. And we do allow anybody in there, even if they haven't attended one of our camps.
Yes. All right. And let's see. I'm looking for more questions here. Hold on. Someone had, here we go. It's so hard to see YouTube with so many machines and materials when most of us are just starting out, 5 lasers or whatever. This person doesn't even have one. So I wanted to address this because the only reason that Cori and I have so many machines is because we literally review the machines. That's our job. If I did not need to review the machines for my YouTube channel, I would probably have just one laser. So I just wanted to note that don't be discouraged that we have so many machines. The only reason I have every Cricut machine on the market is because you asked me questions about every Cricut machine on the market, and I need to have that knowledge. That is my job. If my job was to sell Cricut crafts, I would probably only have the Cricut machine I need to cut that craft. So I hope that helps a little bit with that. No one get discouraged that you can't get 5 lasers.
Yeah. And I feel like because we work, just the nature of our businesses, because of the work we've done, and we've done it for so long, right? We talked about how we got our first Cricuts 14 years ago at this point, because we have worked so long and built up our businesses in the way that we have, which is not the only way to build a business, that we tend to work with companies. But if you're selling things, if you're selling products, like I was for many years, I had one sewing machine that I bought with my own money. And that was perfectly reasonable for the stuff I was selling in my Etsy shop.
And someone asked about using mockups. The question is, do you use mockups in your emails? So if you do not know what a mockup is, a mockup is like taking a file and you basically digitally lay it over an image, stock image, or an image you've taken. You don't actually make the product to photograph it. Yes, it is perfectly fine to use mockups in emails and social media in your listings. However, I will say we'll go back to like perfecting your product. Make sure you know how to make the product. Make sure you know how to put out a good product before you start making those mockups. That's the only thing I wanted to say about that one. All right.
Can you put the link to my books in on the scroller at the bottom? Do you have that?
Oh, I thought I did. Oh my goodness.
There we go.
Sorry.
Let's see. I know we had a few other questions.
If you're on YouTube, it's there now. Sorry.
This is the stuff I edit out of the podcast.
When should you create like a business? At what point do you register and license your hobby? Because we were talking about turning a hobby into a business. Depends on your state, area, locality. So
I think once you make money, it's more of a business. I will come back to this discount code in a second. Just give me a second. So once you start making money, even if you are losing money overall, you should start thinking about like working toward the business side of it if you want to go that direction. It does depend on your locality, on whether or not you're going to register, license, form a business, everything. But if you are selling things, the number one thing I would do is get a business bank account. Should be free to open, but that way you can start to keep that money separate from all of your other money. And so I do think once you're like, okay, people are buying what I'm making, even if you're like not sure, I feel like just that one small step can help make things so much easier going forward.
All right. Do we want to talk about the coupon code?
Yeah. Okay. So people are saying that my books are coming up as $9 and not $7, and I'm not sure why. So I don't have an answer actually for the coupon code, but I will check it out ASAP. My right hand gal Crystal actually has the day off, so it means I'm going to have to figure it out.
So we have no one behind the scenes to figure that out right at this very second,
This
but we
moment.
will figure that out.
I will figure it out. That'll be the first thing I do when I turn off this video.
Okay. Did you see any more questions, or were there any more questions?
Yeah. Does anybody have any more questions?
Otherwise, be sure to take advantage of the amazing deal on the books as soon as we fix the coupon
code. I also wanted to say that, again, this is also a podcast. So you are watching the YouTube live right now where we are chatting and answering questions. After this, we will shut it down and I will go and edit this into a little tighter bit of a podcast. And that will come out on Monday. So you can rate and review that on your favorite podcast channel. You can leave comments here on YouTube. But we wanted to give you just another way to download, listen to our content, and a podcast should help you with that.
I did find a question here. I feel like getting a laser is going to push me away from my Cricut crafting, which I've invested a ton of money in over the past 2 years. How do I blend the two of them?
I feel like there's a lot of ways to blend two different types of crafts. One thing that I see a lot of people doing to blend Cricut and laser crafts, but you would need probably the bigger laser for this, the Pro or the Plus, is to put vinyl on acrylic blanks for keychains and earrings and all sorts of really fun stuff. There's also a lot of ways to combine sublimation and laser cutting and sublimation and Cricut stuff. So I feel like there are lots of combine the two.
Yeah, my favorite thing to do is to combine two different types of crafting. So I feel like there are all kinds of ways to combine the two. And I will say, as much as I talked about loving lasers, my Cricut machines aren't going anywhere. So I do use both. And there are certain things, Cori was talking about, like thicker wood, acrylics, that type of thing. That's going to be my laser. But there are certain things that I would just grab my Cricut machine to cut. Paper is one of those for me that I would just cut with my Cricut machine. So different, and HTV, vinyl, that type of thing. Because you have to be so careful on a laser, I tend to just grab the Cricut if I'm not sure, especially if I can cut it.
Yeah, you can cut some laser safe vinyl and iron on in a laser. It's slower. There's no way I'm ever getting rid of my Cricut. Crickets.
Yes, so they are not going anywhere. So I didn't want to give you that impression at all.
Yeah.
All right, and then let's just do this. How do you create an email list? Let's do that one really quickly.
There are a lot of ways to create an email list. The first thing is to find a email service provider. So do not create your email platform in your Gmail or your Hotmail or whatever. You'll need to find a service provider. We have some that we have talked about here. MailChimp is one. ConvertKit, we learned, gives you up to 1,000 subscribers for free. There are probably others. So basically, you want to find that email service provider, and through that ESP, you can create a form. Like there will be a section to create a form, and then people can fill out the form to join your email list.
Yeah, and so you do want that opt-in. That's very important. So they need to opt into the list. Don't just randomly add people. You do want them to opt in. And what that service gets you is also you're following all the rules and regulations. You're giving them a way to opt out, which is very important. So you will be following all those rules. So you don't just want to, like Cori said, just add a bunch of people to an email on Gmail and send a mass email. It will get you flagged for spam very, very quickly. So doing it the right way, I feel like, is very important. But definitely create that email list in something like ConvertKit or MailChimp. And then whether you're at a craft fair and have a QR code for them to sign up, whether you post a link on your social or on your website to that form, but always direct them to that form to sign up. I feel like that's the safest way to have them opt in.
Yeah, if you do have a physical sign-up form in a craft fair booth, I would have a checkbox that says, I am willing to receive emails, marketing emails from this person, and actually have them check a box and then keep that as a record. Because basically you need to be able to prove that they wanted to join your email list and they knew what they were getting themselves into.
Yes, always cover yourself. Okay, I think that is all the questions we have. So, in 2 weeks, our next episode is going to be on craft business myths, and that is with Jamila Payne is going to be our special guest, and that will be on YouTube on April 11th and on the podcast on April 15th. If you want reminders about all this stuff, you're like YouTube lives and podcasts, and oh my goodness, Angie and Cori are doing so much. We have a newsletter for that, and it is in the YouTube description or the podcast notes. There's a link to sign up for our email list. See that? Like we're using the forms too. So go ahead and click that link, sign up to get that newsletter for all those reminders.
All right. Thank you so much for joining us. We hope you found some good nuggets of information today. Again, the podcast for this episode will come out on Monday. If you want to listen to it in your car or while you're prepping things for your next craft fair, we would love for you to listen. We will see you next time.
All right. See you in 2 weeks.